He asked me why he, as a white man, wasn't allowed to say the N-word, but I was. Said the word full out. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this today. It became very clear to me at that moment that the diversity space has been full of ensuring that individuals who are routinely minoritized and marginalized are responsible for fixing problems that they had no hand in creating.
From the Advancing Women in Tech podcast, this series on female founders highlights their unique ways of stumbling into the startup world, the companies they're currently building, and what they've learned along the way.
I'm Marissa Loren, and today we're talking about how Jennifer Williams is changing the DEI space with her startup Diversit, an AI DEI plus I platform providing expert guidance to companies looking to launch and scale their diversity initiatives. Jennifer Williams' journey to becoming a startup founder has been, well, a journey. From beginning college at the age of 16, with interest in theater, to discovering her love for broadcast journalism, and then eventually making the pivot to HR on a whim, all of that has played a part in her vision for her startup today. But here's how she got here in her own words.
My desire was to make the world pretty. And so theater was my focus for a very long time. Graduated from Howard University with a concentration in broadcast journalism and theater, and kind of ended up here. And a week before I graduated, I decided that I was going to have a quarter life crisis, because, you know, that's what 20-year-olds do. And I was clear that I'd spent my whole life in DC, and I went to college there, and there was no challenge for me. And I was going to wake up and be 80 with 9 cats and a husband, and things were going to be good enough. Again, I'm 20. Like, you get real dramatic at 20. And I was like, I need to live. I need to do something challenging. What's the most insane thing you can do to challenge yourself? And in my head, the most insane thing to do would be to move to New York. And I remember literally 4 days later, all of my world possessions and a can of paint in a van. If I think about my entrepreneurial journey, that started about 9 months ago. So everything is just on fire and crazy. I've worked in an HR capacity in a number of tech spaces, primarily because tech back in the day was the space where innovation was. And if you had innovative practices, that also meant that you could practice innovative HR. There were more people-centric, people-forward, in theory, processes and procedures that would afford you the opportunity to actually engage human capital, as it's called, which is kind of gross, to ensure that you're actually seeing them and are actually able to help them in places of work and support them so that they can thrive. You know, it's kind of a, if I support you, you will support me type of deal. Unfortunately, far too many workplaces don't look at people that way. And it's kind of sad. And it's kind of why we've gotten to the place where we've gotten to now. So I started as an executive assistant for someone in the HR space and began asking questions. Maybe because I'm curious, possibly because I don't know how not to get myself in situations, probably both. I remember I was very clear that if I was going to have a job, after looking at someone who is in the HR space and after understanding that the creators of organizations needed HR to take care of people, and also having an understanding of what HR meant, right? Especially in larger organizations. Ultimately, HR gets to create the rules. And I was like, well, if I'm going to have a job, I'm going to need to know what the rules are, because I'm going to want to do what I want to do. And I need to know what the rules are so I know how to break them just well enough to not get in trouble, but to get things done. That's how Jen thinks. And so watching my old boss aided and assisted me in understanding the nuts and bolts of how you actually put together planning for people. And they were a pretty great boss, and they threw me into the deep end a lot of the time. I would ask a question. I think it all started because I asked a question about a handbook. And I was like, why are people coming to you? We have like a very nimble staff of people that if you give them something to read, they'll read it and do whatever's necessary. She's like, yeah, okay, do it, make it, bye. And I was like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't say that because I wanted more work. I was literally curious. Oh, you want me to make a handbook? Okay. Uh, didn't sign up. Okay, I guess I'm making handbooks now. And that is how it all started. And I'm grateful, right? When you understand the tasks that underpin a profession, you have so much more of a respect for why things are the way that they are. Um, Shout out to handbooks. Can make one to this day with my eyes closed.
So Jennifer got her start in HR in a very hands-on role, and she stayed in the industry for years, long enough to watch it evolve and see it strive to become actually inclusive of its employees, rather than just talking about inclusivity.
So I'm glad we're in the age now where there's a conversation happening about toxic workplaces and about how you have to be when you show up. I very much remember the Jennifer that hair and put it in a ponytail when she had to go to an interview. And then I think this has been 8 years. I just woke up one day and I was like, well, you've done HR for long enough. So screw it. I'm just going to come in with big hair and because I want to. And I remember having a conversation with my mother right beforehand and she was like, oh my God, Jennifer, you're going to interview people with your hair like that. And I was like, I am legit. So I dare someone to say something about it. I'm also tired. Oh, this is what my hair does. I'm not conforming and I shouldn't have to. And I remember walking in and it was like, oh my God, your hair is so. And I was like, touch me and die. Let's not and say that we didn't. Okay. No, not a pet. But there was a sense of reclamation. I felt powerful just being able to sit in my wholeness. Like, this is who I am. This is how I am. This is how I present. And it wasn't until later when I started doing work with natural hair and long nails and just whatever I felt was correct. It wasn't a flex. I came in with my big hair because I was exhausted of playing small, of having to act like I needed to be someone else, of having to feel like I had to make people comfortable to do work. Like, I was just, I'm tired of it, right? Part of the reason that I got into HR was to help people. Part of HR is understanding that everyone is different. And so I'm going to walk in and just be authentically myself. And if it's too much, well, then this isn't the place for me. And that's always been my barometer, especially now. And I mean, now, Lord God, I'm old. So the things that you can tell me are very minimal. I say it all the time. I'm like, you can tell me I'm not amazing. I won't believe you. That's cute. You're allowed. Everyone has opinions. A lot of them are wrong. Whatever. There's a power in the freedom.
Jennifer meshed her professional experience in HR with her personal experiences in the workplace and started a DEI consulting company that would go on to help many companies implement better practices following the brutal murder of George Floyd.
And I can track from May 25th, 2020 to June the 2nd to June 11th to June 15th, because by that time I had my own DEI consultancy, the amount of calls that I got from very scared white people to just be like, Jen, can you talk to people? And I was like, talk about what? I knew about what, but I was like, I'm not going to let you off the hook. Why am I here? Why am I suddenly getting this very urgent, scared call? And they're like, things are happening. We want to I was like, so you want me to be Black for you? Let's just call a spade a spade. You would like me to show up and be Black for you because you have no other idea what to do. I mean, yeah, I'll do it, but I just want you to acknowledge what it is that you're asking me to do. Right. And I, the calls went from 2 to 10 to 12 to 25. And I was just like, oh, everybody is doing this. And in my land, especially the way that I focus on DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and intersectionality, because all of your parts determine how you look at the world. Social location is big on how you interpret the world and how to interpret you. Me coming in and having a conversation was tip of the iceberg. Okay. And I remember having these conversations and then, reporting back to CEOs, okay, I talk, now we need to focus on these things. And I get, no, we're done. And I was like, no, you're not done. What in the blue hell are you talking about? You are not done. You still have people that are being harmed by policies and procedures that are draconian and harmful. that you have yet to actually do something about, like me. And the more it happened, the more I was like, got it. You don't actually want to change anything. You just want to bring someone in so it looks like you changed something. And it went from interesting to like really disturbing. I had a conversation with the CEO who asked me after one of my speeches if he could ask me a question. He asked me why he, as a white man, wasn't allowed to say the N word, but I was. Said the word full out. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this today. So I hung up the phone. I was like, I literally can't do this with people today. Hung up the phone. And I immediately called the wonderful human that is now the CTO of Diverse and my co-founder. And I went off. Marissa, I was like, no, this is wrong. DEI is hurting. And I'm just railing off. And I was like, this is wrong. I'm tired and da da da. And I get off the phone with him. Literally 30 minutes of just railing. I was like, I can't be in this DEI space anymore. Like I'm going to throw something at someone. This is stupid. This is stupid. I get an email from the same gentleman. We're going to call him Joe. And it was super apologetic. And it was to the tune of, I asked a very hurtful, harmful question. I am sorry that I put you in that position. I should have never done that. I definitely, monopolized how you feel. And I'm so, and like, I read his email, and two things can be true at the same time, Marissa. Was that a dumb move that he pulled? Yes. And did I believe him after I read his email? Also, yes. It became very clear to me at that moment that the diversity space has been full of ensuring that individuals who are routinely minoritized and marginalized are responsible for fixing problems that they had no hand in creating. It created situations like that. And if there was some level of engagement where individuals who are well-meaning and stumbling, or hell, even those who are not well-meaning and stumbling, but want to act like they want to be better, there needed to be some level of accountability put on them, not just on us. Mm-hmm. Maybe an hour after that, my co-founder Jared hits me up and he's like, hey Jen, remember that conversation? We was like, yeah, like an hour and a half ago. He's like, check your email. And I checked my email, and in my email is the first mainframe version of Diverse. And that's how it started. Diverse is a tech company that utilizes big data and AI to assist enterprises with DEI outcomes. So inherently, we do the work of being very clear on how you are stacking up in the DEI space in your organization and against your competitors. Then we come in and actually make you better. We also have longitudinal surveying that ensures that we're very clear about who is actually making up your workforce, and then asking them very detailed, very, very personalized questions that have been anonymized, so that we can get this data and aid and assist organizations in being better and doing better and making decisions in situations from a diversity perspective that are actually helpful. We then take all of that information and create it into data. Far too often, there is but we brought in a speaker. And my question is, so how well did they do? And they're like, I mean, everybody liked them. And I'm like, so what happened after? Crickets. I'm like, so you paid a crap ton of money for a speaker that came in and made you feel good on the inside with no active impact on the outcome of work or the people that work here. That's what you're telling me. And when I ask people that question, they're like, oh, maybe that wasn't good. And I was like, no, that's not. But like, when you have an understanding of how well or how poorly you've done, you can then fix something. And a lot of these organizations haven't been held to an accountability or standard where they've had an understanding of how well or how poorly they're doing. Quite honestly, diversity has become such a buzzword. Diverse is here to do the work of fixing it, because I'm tired of the game of talking about diversity and not actually doing something about it. Being in HR for as long as I have been, and having an understanding that one of the most vulnerable positions you can put yourself in is when something has happened and when you need to talk to HR. For various reasons, a lot of people don't do that, mainly Black women. Why? Because ultimately, whatever you say happened could be weaponized against you, especially if it happened with someone who is a woman who is not Black. It becomes harder to feel safe, right? Add that that to the fact that the overall general narrative is that HR is there for the company and not for you. And you've created a very chilling effect overall of this happened, but no one's really going to care. So people tend to hold it to themselves. DD being a bot and being really approachable and being safe and non-judgmental is in the spirit and ethos of her design, right? People can be threatening and scare you and make you think specific things. But DD's and it's easy to talk to a bot. It becomes extraordinarily simple to be able to engage in a manner where you are able to let out your grievances, to speak to what's happening, to just have a listening ear, to engage, to park thoughts. And DD's whole job is to do that.
The fact that there's a private place to tell somebody what's going on and get feedback that is, this is how you handle the situation without having to go to a human where you have to deal with politics and any scary things. I love that about Diversid because it creates a safe space, but also you're getting the information that you need. Next 5 years, what improvements do you want to see implemented in the DEI space, and how do you see Diversid being part of that conversation?
I want there to be data-driven diversity, equity, inclusion, and intersectionality touch points for any and all organizations. I want diverse to be a household name. I want companies to ask, or employees rather, to ask companies, are you diverse? Like, do you have a diverse score? I want in 5 years for the expectation that organizations that do any work with people, spoiler alert, that's all of them, have some level of engagement with how they're making people feel. Like people's feelings aren't disposable. How I feel directly impacts how I work. Full stop. And if more individuals and more organizations were mindful of that and created opportunities for people who are different, right? Who are not just like standard, literally able-bodied white men, whom the workforce was built for, right? There's so many other people who are not that, who are working in these spaces. And it doesn't take a lot for people to feel supported. And I'm tired of asking for that bare minimum. So in 5 years, I want there to be a bare maximum. I want everyone to be able to walk into their place of employment and do that thing where you can bring your whole self to work. In 5 years, I want to stop having the same conversation around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to see some very clear level of result via data. And Diversid can do that.
That's Jennifer Williams of Diversid. We'll catch you guys in our next episode.